Okay, I am live now. Wow, I've been trying to go live for like half an hour, but it wasn't working, so now I'm here. Just some technical difficulties. Welcome everyone who's listening. The title of this video is, How do we know what's true? I wanted to talk about the various news items that are coming out that are actually informing our debates and our decisions and how we feel about people and what we say to people. And what I've noticed is that, like most things, there is a difference between a news item now that's true for the entire span of the topic, or something that's temporary, that is only one little piece of the data. Often with media and matters of national importance, we get only one little piece of the data. Yeah. Hi, Garen. Hi, Raul. Hope you're doing well. Example, this article about, this study it was actually a study at the VA hospital in South Carolina. They took the medical records and just did a survey of them. And they basically chose like half the people who did not have hydroxychloroquine administered to them and half who did. And this particular observational study, by the way, which is not a randomized controlled trial or RCT, it is an observational study, which just means you're not going about it in a live setting. It's not an actual trial. It's just going through medical records. And the irony of this is that Dr. Fauci and others have been saying that hydroxychloroquine needs a randomized controlled study, but this ain't it, folks. This ain't it. And yet it made huge headlines yesterday. Everybody was talking about it and seizing on it, saying, see, I told you so. It actually does more harm than good. It actually killed people, is basically what they were saying on CNN. This is the height of irony because fact, the CDC does not conduct randomized clinical trials on the flu vaccine because, get this, it would be inhumane considering that the federal government mandates vaccines for everyone in the country. So you couldn't have a control. And I can post the link to that. I know sometimes I say I'm going to post links and then I don't, but this is very important. And so where is all the concern about the flu shot when it was not tested in randomized controlled trials, and especially for pregnant women who they regularly give the vaccine to, and they've never done a double-blind controlled study of the flu vaccine. And yet, they will not even greenlight this already established drug, hydroxychloroquine. They will not greenlight it, and if it weren't for the right to try law, nobody would be getting it. Now, are you concerned about people's hearts? Are you really concerned about heart patients? Well, you should be. And the main doctor who did this in France, who is still being marginalized by the media and was completely marginalized by CNN yesterday, and by The Guardian also, he said dosage is very important. This man has dedicated his entire life to infectious diseases. He regularly travels to Africa. He had a whole institute built by the French government, but for some reason he's not well liked by those who, maybe they're interested in more flashy, fancy type cures. There's definitely, disagreement in France about him, but to act like he's just some bumpkin is so incredibly misleading. Here, I'll read you a little bit from The Guardian. This is a Guardian article from today by Julia Carey Wong. Now, the Guardian is a London paper. She says, with endorsements from a controversial French physician, Fox News and Donald Trump, hydroxychloroquine, an old anti-malarial drug that is today more commonly used to treat lupus, has received a disproportionate amount of attention as a potential treatment for COVID-19. Great, I'm glad you can see me, Raul. That was crazy. It has also become another partisan political wedge issue in the U.S. Conservative politicians and media figures have hyped studies that support the theory that the drug is a potential treatment. And on Wednesday, Rick Bright, the head of a U.S. government agency charged with investing in treatments and responses for pandemics, said he was forced out of his job over his resistance to the administration's misguided directives promoting broad use of the drug, which he said clearly lack scientific merit. Now, this is a news article, but the reporter says the hype around hydroxychloroquine is irresponsible, but the hope is understandable. There is as yet no drug that has been shown to be effective against the coronavirus, which has killed more than 180,000 people worldwide. The limited evidence around hydroxychloroquine so far has come in a steady stream of scientific studies, often as soon as they are posted online as preprints, i.e. before they have gone through the rigorous vetting process known as peer review. None of the studies that have been released meet the gold standard for demonstrating a drug's effectiveness. A large-scale, double-blinded, randomized controlled trial, RCT, through multiple trials of that kind. Though multiple trials of that kind are underway. So then they go over all the different trials. Then they talk about the controversial French study. And it did undergo peer review before publication in the International Journal of Antimicrobial Agents, IJAA. And what people forget, or they aren't told about in these articles, is that this virologist, Didier Raoult, who is unimpeachable in his credentials, has said it would be inhumane if he were to have a control group. So they try to shred this study. They say there were numerous problems with the study's design and the way its results were reported. There were 4 patients who died, and that was out of 1,000, but they don't even say it's out of 1,000. It is so deceptive. They say all of the 4 patients with clear bad outcomes, 3 went to the ICU and 1 died. 1 patient died. Received the HCQ but were excluded from the viral shedding analysis. Oh, that's too bad, Bob. The researchers said that the remaining patients who received the drug, I need glasses, shed virus for a shorter duration. And I have the table showing a massive drawdown of viral load. And then this person says this opened the door for people promoting the drug to mischaracterize the results and say they showed a, quote, 100% cure rate. Oh, I'm glad, Bob. I'm glad you can see it. So, it may seem like I'm beating a dead horse, especially to people who have felt that this is Donald Trump's drug, which it's absolutely not. But I cannot let this go. It is so deceptive that it just bowls me over how deceptive these articles are. You can basically take something and turn it into whatever you want then, whatever you want to say. And so they mentioned the VA study. They mentioned the trial in Brazil that got headlines in the New York Times. And get this, they let this little ditty slip in. Talk about Brazil, and they say the Brazilian trial was designed to compare the efficacy of 2 different doses of hydroxychloroquine, and it did not include a control group that only received a placebo. But they liked this study because they had to abandon it. Researchers found the higher dose, which they chose because it was recommended by Chinese authorities, to be unsafe, but they are continuing to test the efficacy of a lower dose. Their paper has not yet been peer-reviewed. I don't know who the hell edited this thing, and I'm going to have to really restrain myself from not swearing, but basically, the New York Times came out with a reason for an article over a study in Brazil that abandoned the high-dosage part of the study, but they're still continuing the low dosage part of the study. And we know that the guy who has done the most study of it in France said dosage is key. I don't know, the outright deception and the out and out almost desperate attempt to characterize this treatment as not good for COVID-19 and this unprecedented pandemic. It's really, really amazing. Like, I can hardly even believe it. It is so transparent. It is so transparent. I just don't even know. Especially that paragraph, which we see in all mainstream media paragraphs. I just gotta say, there is as yet no drug that has been shown to be effective against the coronavirus, which has killed more than 180,000 people worldwide. That is unbelievably irresponsible. You can say it's been shown in observational studies, but they didn't include any of the promising ones. So I don't know how much more I can say about that, but the story isn't over, folks. Here's another headline in The Guardian. Trump stops hyping hydroxychloroquine after study shows no benefit. Fox News staffers also backed away from promoting drug after a recent U.S. trial did not go well. It wasn't a trial. It was an observational study of medical records after the fact. It was not a trial. And they're trying to act like this is the definitive trial, and it's not. And then, of course, everybody runs with it on social media. I told you so. I told you so. So, it says they backed away, but I don't even believe that, because Laura Ingraham was on last night with two doctors who absolutely hit the nail on the head. One of them had already been interviewed by her, Stephen Smith, a virologist in New York, and he wasn't backing down at all. So, Stephen Smith, so we know NIH recommended against using hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin, citing the potential for toxicities. Oh yeah, you get the drug over a period of a few days, recover from coronavirus, but the people who are taking it long-term for lupus, the toxicity is just part of the game. And so Stephen Smith, I searched for Stephen Smith and it came up with that article. I'm telling you right now, I don't know what the heck is going on, but I've never seen such an out-and-out push to suppress something as simple and innocuous as this. And they have screenings for heart patients. Yeah, it's very surreal. Thanks. I mean, I'm sorry that I keep talking about it, but I just wanted to say that Dr. Stephen Smith, he pushed back. He had said before, I think this is the beginning of the end of the pandemic. I'm very serious. Now, this is an old article. Whatever. He was on last night and he was saying that to take that study and act like it's the definitive study is such BS. And I also want to point out that zinc is an important element of the treatment that has so far shown success. So I think that the fact that they didn't use zinc is very typical of our American healthcare system, which is allopathic and refuses to look at traditional remedies also to have an integrated approach, which is absolutely has been deadly to our progress in this country. And I think many of you already know that. So zinc, thank you, Garen. Yeah, I mean, they're exposed. I'm not going to stop. I'm going to talk more about it. And another thing I realized, too, is that they want to get to the point where if you mention this drug anymore, it's like you're tainted. You almost have a bad social credit score, like in China. I mean, I was mulling this over yesterday after that news came out, and I thought, wow, people will think of me as, a Fox News puppet or, an individual spouting Fox News or faux news. But believe me, this isn't the first time that people have used that as a way to intimidate me. And so, folks, this is the end game. I am really, really serious that this is so deceptive and it's so premature that those who have been involved in it, they're the ones in the end who will be tainted. They will be tainted by allegiance to some other director. And who do I think that is? Well, it is obviously the almighty dollar. Obviously. Big Pharma does not make any money on this drug. Now, is that a reason to say it works? No. But if you put together pieces and patterns, you will see that often cures are suppressed, and with the idea of waiting for either a vaccine or using a drug that makes money. But as far as this goes, I'm going to shift gears now. I thought I would look up the rate of infections in the elderly and cause of death. And because I had heard that infections, like what they call secondary infections in nursing homes, are a huge cause of death and a huge problem. I mean, how many of us have had a relative who's gone into the hospital and maybe even were getting even somebody was just getting a colonoscopy and they were elderly and didn't make it. They got sepsis, they got an infection, and that was it. So I found some statistics real quick on cause of death for people over the age of 65. I'm still kind of trying to, the incidence of colonization in nursing homes varies from 4 to 20%. Okay. Colonized? Wow. See, I didn't even know that was a thing. Common infections in nursing homes. A review of current... Okay, this is a little bit old of a review. Not a trial, a review. Over 1.5 million people live in 16,000 nursing homes in the USA and experience an average of 2 million infections a year. Infections have been associated with high rates of morbidity and mortality. Now, Sweden is actually saying, the Swedish health minister pushed back on all the bad press saying that they made a huge mistake. Yeah, they made a huge mistake on their not shutting down, and they're paying for it now, and they're hyping it. Now, Sweden, I think last week had 1,000 deaths. I think now they may have 1,500, but the Swedish health minister said, this is because we are not taking care of our patients or patients in nursing homes. This is because we did not protect our patients in nursing homes from the coronavirus. And I would totally agree that it's the same problem here in the United States. It's just we have a new infection. Okay, let me see, Bob. What are you saying? Good point. However, after seeing people not being able to discern the motives of the... Yeah, for sure. Oh, I know. I mean, people really, really trust in... They don't trust doctors and scientists. They trust one kind of doctor and one kind of scientist. And you know what kind of doctor and scientist they trust? The ones who are being told what to say by the government, and the ones who have been either silenced by blackmail or being threatened with professional suicide, really. Oh, isn't that funny? They named it after the galaxy. So, back to nursing home infections. Let me read you the cause of death in the United States for people over 65. Now, disclaimer. I'm not implying that coronavirus is not severe and horrible. I am trying to inform myself as well as you. Now, this has, in 1980, all causes of death in people 65 or older were 1,341,848. So essentially about 1,350,000. So a little less than 1.5 million people died over the age of 65 in 1980. These are raw numbers. In 2017, 2 million, just over 2 million people died. So that means that's good. That means that mortality, we all know the lifespan's getting larger. But in 2017, all causes, heart disease number 1, Cancer, number 2. Emphysema, bronchitis, COPD, and 80% of these people are smokers. Chronic lower respiratory diseases. That's chronic lower respiratory as opposed to pneumonia, which is acute. 4. Cerebrovascular diseases associated with stroke. 5. Alzheimer's disease. Now, Alzheimer's had 120,107 people die. And by the way, Alzheimer's wasn't even in the top 10 in 1980. Diabetes, 59,000. Unintentional injuries or accidents, 55,000. Next, this is the 7th, or the 8th. Influenza and pneumonia, 46,862. Now, I've heard that they do overcount influenza deaths, but it's still pneumonia. So you either have pneumonia or you have influenza. Those are lower respiratory infections, and many pneumonia cases are just automatically included as flu, I've found out, and I have good sources for that. Okay, 9th, nephritis, nephrotic syndrome, and nephrosis, kidney disease. 10th, guess what 10th is? Yes, Garen, you got it already. It's septicemia, blood poisoning caused by bacteria or their toxins. Sepsis. 31,000 Americans over the age of 65 died in 2017 of sepsis. And correct me if I'm wrong, Garen, I think sepsis occurs usually as like a complication. It's like, it is a secondary infection if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. But if you took sepsis, 31,000 people dying of that, and add it to influenza and pneumonia, you have 77,800 people died of the exact type of situation we are seeing right now. And unfortunately, the CDC does not have, of course, they don't have 2020 numbers yet, but I would bet you anything. I would bet a lot of money that those numbers will be down and that coronavirus will go up, but that the overall number will be similar. Hi, Rick. Nice to see you. I hope you can roll it back later because we were just talking about, I don't know, it got rather heated, right? I'm so outraged. And so UTIs are very common in the elderly, correct, Garen? You say UTIs go septic daily. Yeah. So, Rick and everyone, I was just saying that if you add the cause of death from 2017 for those over the age of 65, there's 46,862 people who die of died of influenza and pneumonia, and 31,000 people who died of sepsis or septicemia. And if you add that together, that's almost 80,000, or it's 77,000 people who die of acute lower respiratory disease and sepsis. And the Swedish health minister was pushing back on people who were saying that their decision not to lock down was a huge blunder. He said somehow it got into the nursing home system, and that's why the deaths have gone up recently. And I have been thinking about this for a very long time, too, because I read all about that party they had at the nursing home in Washington State where 20 people died. And that was the very first site of, aside from patient 0, and now we're finding that there were maybe earlier patients, too. But the nursing home situation is a big factor. And what you got to understand when you're analyzing facts and you want to have complete facts is that you cannot assume causation. And so you got these articles, these breathless, screeching screeds about how Sweden failed because they wanted to have an experiment in herd immunity, when herd immunity is not, failure to shut down, failure to lock down is not a cause of their death rate. Do you understand that? There are so many other factors, namely, as the Swedish health minister pointed out, that they do not have a system in place to protect their elderly. Now, again, when this thing first happened and I thought about that nursing home in Washington State, I thought to myself, boy, I bet you a lot of people are going to pull their parents and elders out of nursing homes, or at least we're going to have some major reform. But I'll tell you something. You think that we've been paying attention to how horrible conditions are in nursing homes in general? No. No, we have not. You know, if you're lucky and you have a lot of money, maybe, okay. But even the luxury ones, I've done some cleaning in them before, and it costs a lot of money just to get mediocre care, I think. And the people who work there are, you know, you got to be a saint. And so, what is wrong with our society? I think this is a big missing piece. And hi, Inga. Hi, Inga. Oh, Garen, what are you answering the question now? Please answer your question in a complete sentence, since I have no idea what you're responding to. You said, no, we have not. Yeah, where was I? Oh, Sweden. So I wanted to point, and Inga, I was saying that in 2017, there were 77,000 deaths from either sepsis or influenza and pneumonia. And so I'm pretty certain, and I would bet, that when the numbers finally come in for 2020, that we will have some of those numbers just transferred over to coronavirus. I am not saying coronavirus is like the flu. It is a horrible plague, and it is very scary, and it is killing people other than the elderly. However, those people the reason they make the news is that they're young. The reason they make the news is that there's a very small percentage of people like that. Still, oh yeah, we have not addressed elder care. No, you know, our society is very flippant. It's very, you know, ADD. And unless it's right at the top of the news hour, we're not worried about it. You put grandma here and go visit her and feel like a good person because you go visit her. But the problem of getting infections and a secondary infection in a senior home it's a big, huge problem. I don't have the exact percentages right now, but I don't know how many infections are fatal, but I would say a lot of them, Garen, who works in this field, said that UTI infections happen regularly, and then they go into sepsis daily. Anyway, so I am not minimizing Corona and COVID-19. I think every state and region is different. I think taking precautions and social distancing is really great. I think making every single person staying inside is absolutely ridiculous, because that's just perpetuating the virus. In fact, when I'm done with this, I am going to go outside because it is a very nice day right now. Elder care has been monetized like child daycare, Rick says, when ideally families should provide the care. I agree. I mean, we went from, you know, the me generation, you know, I mean, we went from counterculture to the me generation to the 80s, and I mean, we're probably the country that the most has a very fragmented family. We don't live in the same household as our elders, and in a way, that's why Italy, one of the reasons Italy suffered so much is that the young people who were working in the cities lived with their grandparents, so the irony. However, putting them in a place where their infection is rampant, yeah, okay, UTI numbers are immense. It just sounds like a horrible problem. It must be so depressing to see that every single day, and there's just nothing. I mean, what would be your recommendation, Garen, for dealing with I guess they call it colonization now, of it's a colony of bacteria infections in nursing homes. Oh yeah. Okay. Now I'm trying to see if I can find death rates, but I did find that sepsis causes about more than 30,000 people over the age of 65 to die. So why are we not looking at this right now? Have we all just completely lost our minds all of a sudden? I mean, in the beginning, we saw that it was being politicized, the virus. And then, thanks to Trump's unique way of saying things, people thought he was saying the virus was a hoax. He did not want, I agree, he didn't want to admit that things were as bad as they were, but I don't think any of us did. I mean, did anyone really want to have this level of a pandemic that completely wipes out the greatness that we've achieved in the last 3 years? Anybody? I just got a phone call. I hope that didn't I hope that didn't affect things. I should have put it on Do Not Disturb. So does anybody really... I know who wanted a pandemic that would wipe away all the gains. I know exactly who would want it. People who live in a world where they think that everything has gone horribly wrong in our country. And then when you ask them what it is, they cannot name it except for hate crimes being up. But that's a lie too. And I've covered that in other videos. I'm not saying everything's just dandy. The rhetoric gets a little out of control, but are there any attempts to understand the rhetoric of people who voted for change in this country? No, there are no attempts at that. Now they're calling people who are protesting the government shutdown as Flu Klux Klan, and they're calling them racist. I mean, I have friends I respected their intelligence who are posting about Flu Klux Klan, claiming this is a racial issue. And there was an article in theroot.com saying, reopen the economy is the new white lives matter. And I drove by the beach yesterday on Pacific Coast Highway, and I saw a lot of people at the beach. I mean, not packed, but pretty normal for a Wednesday. And most of them were people of color. Most of them were Latino. And I'm sure that if they're not working, they want to get out in nature, leave the concrete jungle. And there was a police officer who was yelling into his megaphone for people to move their cars and leave, and saying that they couldn't park there. I got it on video, but I'll share that later. Anyway, I think the idea that it's a racial issue came from an article that said that Black Americans are more vulnerable to coronavirus. Well, they're more vulnerable in general. Just like the unemployment rate being higher, yes, our Black citizens have gotten the short end of the stick, and not in the way that you would think. Instead of being trusted and being given opportunity to be proud of their work. Now, I'm not saying there aren't wonderful middle and upper class Black Americans. There are. But I'm talking about those that have been left behind. And I'm talking about the fact that they have a higher incarceration rate, a higher conviction rate, a higher crimes committed recorded rate or reported, and higher poorer health. Same with Latinos. Huge problems with diabetes and heart disease due to diet. And that's not a criticism. It's just a fact. So to come out with some breathless, panicked article that coronavirus is going to hit Black Americans more disproportionately is just very, very deceptive, as I've been talking about through this whole broadcast. And the way that we correct this is through gainful employment and incentive and entrepreneurialism and the right to be a free-thinking, free-born human being on this earth, to do something that really makes you shine and makes you happy. And that's pretty much it. If you're stuck in a ghetto with horrible schools and textbooks from 1972 and, bad teachers in the bad moods or teachers who are afraid, crime just compounding itself, then you're not being given opportunity. So that has to change. And those of us who've been paying attention, we do know that President Trump has been focusing on this. So for people to think that things were just going horribly is an insult to African Americans, actually. And I've said in other videos, I think that Democrats are more racist. And I'm not just saying that. They don't secretly, deep down, the reason that they're so horrified by what they see as racism is that they, in their heart of hearts, really are racist. And so, please don't say Flu Klux Klan around me. I might unfollow you. No, whatever. But thanks for watching. Stay tuned. The jury is not out about hydroxychloroquine. It is not out. There are 100 studies going on around the country right now. There are many physicians who are not agreeing with the narrative of some limited observational study by the VA of just flipping through people's medical records. Oh, they had hydroxychloroquine. Oh, and they died. No trial, and certainly not a clinical trial, which is so ironic. The jury's not out. The jury's not out on remdesivir, which was shown to cure the very first patient in Seattle. They supposedly started the trials back in early March and were supposed to be finished by April, but it just seems like these little studies or dribs and drabs are coming out. Every once in a while we'll get some good news, but of course, according to the political media and national media, of course, those are not peer-reviewed. Those are not randomized clinical trials. But whenever something else comes out that says that it has no effect and doesn't help, either of those drugs, then even though this isn't peer-reviewed, this is the definitive word, ladies and gentlemen. Well, I'm sorry. I am not going to live on a planet where people have such a disregard for complete facts. And I will stand up for them wherever and whenever. And I thought to myself, if you want to make me look like a fool with some idiotic cherry-picked study that wasn't peer-reviewed and that was just observational, then I will be that fool. I will be the fool for truth. And I hope you will join me in being fools for truth. Thank you very much. I hope you go and have a wonderful Thursday. Please share. Please like the page because this is important. And if people see that my page is dinky and small, then, or if they're afraid to like it or afraid to share it because of what their family might think, then we're sunk, we're lost. Now's the time to share it. Now's the time to shout from the housetops. Now's the time to explain the nuance. Now's the time to share complete facts. Now's the time to give context. This is the time. People are dying. When we can do it calmly. Keep calm and be a fool for truth. Thank you. See you soon. Please subscribe and support my channel on Patreon and YouTube. I really need some help. Thank you.